So what makes you an expert in your field?
If we're talking on a personal level, I've worked in recruitment both internally for large and small organisations, and in recruitment agencies, I've worked on both sides of the fence. I've worked across lots of different industries, and the one thing that's common is recruitment's the same. The process of recruitment is exactly the same, and as long as you implement the same process, it works the same way. I believe I'm an expert in the sense that I've been successful in pretty much every industry I've worked in. I've been able to help businesses become better at recruitment. So that is where my expertise comes from on a recruitment standpoint. And I would say that the operations of finance is very similar in the fact that my partners are ultimately been worked in the industry, working across different industries. Working in operations of finance across different industries for a long period of time as well.
Okay, so recruitment, operations, finance, what would you say the most common challenges SMEs face?
I think the biggest issue that a lot of the SMEs face is understanding where your strengths lie and understanding what you're good at. You've created a business based upon, I'm assuming most people are based on either a passion or what they're really good at, and then they've taken that and they've built a business, and then they've naturally brought in people to help them, support them, and make them grow, etc. We think the biggest challenge is not knowing when your strengths are now your weaknesses. And it's like, for example, for me at the moment, I know what I'm good at, and I'm pretty good at doing most things, but people out there are better. And if I need someone to do marketing, I could probably do a good go at marketing, use ChatGPT, use all these different tools available, and I'll probably do a pretty decent job at it. But there's people out there who can do it brilliantly. And It's knowing that you either want to do it really well or you want to just do it enough. And I think that is, in essence, is understanding where your strengths are and understanding that people have better strengths.
So what would you say the first challenge SMEs face? They're growing. What would you say is right at the forefront?
I would reckon most SMEs would probably say it's going to be based around the talent, around recruiting the right people and then retaining the right people. I think that's probably going to be one big. I see a lot of companies obviously always worried about that. How do I retain my staff? How do I make sure that I'm bringing in the right people into the organisation? So that's where hopefully I can support them in giving them the necessary tools and time to make sure that they're doing that correctly, really.
Okay.
And then on the operational aspect, it's probably then looking at performance management. So how do you then make sure that your staff are performing at the right level? And if you've got anyone that's not, how do you then handle that in a way that you're doing it, within the correct way, shall we say? So there's definitely on that side of things as well.
What would you say one underrated tip businesses should have, but they don't follow?
Ooh, I think the tip I would probably say for me is don't be afraid to seek advice from professionals. So for me at the moment, I'm constantly trying to consider, in order for me to grow, I need support in certain areas. And rather than try and work it out myself, pick up the phone, maybe have a chat with people, just don't be afraid to ask people. There's so many different solutions out there that can support businesses with that growth.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. I mean, I was on the phone to somebody about, SEO the other day, and it's like I could have gone and learned all this stuff myself, but
Exactly.
from one call with somebody who's a professional in SEO,
Yeah.
I've learned a bunch of things, and then I get the choice, okay, am I going to go and learn this more? Or knowing that this person's a professional, am I going to go hire them? Well, to be honest, by the time I've heard all these things, they've given me this advice for free, I'm probably going, actually, I want to use the professional because they've got all this experience, and that's going to save me time to be able to keep focusing on business. And I suppose it's the same for you. You know, somebody wants to aspire to grow because they need to focus on the business and they want, you know, that recruitment done well.
Yeah, I mean, do what you're good at. If we think about it, I know where my limitation, I know what I'm good at, and I'm really good at what I think I can do, and I'm good at that, yeah? But give it to other people who what you're not as good at. Yeah, funny enough, I had the SEO situation myself recently with my website.
There you go.
And, you know, I had a course that I could have gone on, but actually in the end I've decided to take on an SEO expert. So, yeah, remember what you're good at, I think is the one liner I would probably give people.
How would you tailor your approach uniquely to each client?
I think the key is to listen. I think it's like, as a business owner, you know your business inside out. You know your strengths. Hopefully, you'll know your threats, your weaknesses, etc. You know, our job isn't to tell you that. Our job is to help you achieve or bridge that problem as quick as possible. So for me, I would say that that would be.
So sustainability's, you know, a word which is bouncing around a lot recently. How would you help a business grow sustainably, not just quickly?
Ooh, I like that. Good question. I think it's taking stock all the time and reflecting on what's gone well, how things could improve. I mean, there's no magic potion to recruitment, unfortunately. There's no magic potion to business growth. You know, it's just doing the foundations right, doing everything right, doing everything to the best. I mean, I take recruitment as a point. I can't give you a 100%. If I help you hire someone, it will 100% work. What I am doing is mitigating your risks.
Yes.
So I'm trying to reduce your risks of getting it wrong. And so, you know, if you're trying to do it yourself and you're not very good at it, your risk is going to be a lot greater.
Of course.
You do it with a professional, you know, the risk is a lot less.
Yes.
So I would say that, you know, Aspire to Grow is about mitigating those risks.
Can you give an example of a success story that really stands out?
I'll give an example of I'll give you an example of a recruitment success that really stands out for me. When I was, again, working at this broker, I was working with the managing director. He had been hiring pretty much the same talent that's been regurgitated around the different competitors. You know, 20 odd years working in broking, you know, has all the wonderful clients, candidates and stuff like that. And the one success story that I'd really like to tell about is about one day I sat down and said, why are we doing this? We're paying money. We're bringing this person in a couple of years. Our competitor's going to offer them more money and they're going to be off again. And we're just losing that like knowledge and experience and that, you know, networking that they would have done during the time. You know, let's think about this differently. Let's think about what exactly are we looking for from this individual. And when we really broke it down, and it comes back to the behaviours and the skills, it was the behaviours that were most important. And we ended up taking someone from a completely random industry who had been basically selling to the same clients but a different product.
Right.
They'd been selling print. It wasn't even related to insurance, but they were basically doing the exact same thing, just selling a different product.
So they knew how to talk to
They
the
knew how
clients.
to talk to the clients. They knew how to sell. They knew how to follow up. They knew all the concepts, what he needed as a sales director in this case. And so therefore we did, similar to what I was telling you earlier, we did an assessment day. We put that person up against all the other individuals that had all the industry experience that they needed, etc. And this person stood out. It was a gold standard.
Yeah.
So we took this person on. It took 3 or 4 months for this person to get up to speed in the language and understand the products and all that sort of stuff. But he ended up being the best performing sales director in the business. And ironically, that person went on to become the MD. And the last time I knew, I think he went even higher. And it was just a really good example of thinking outside the box and not doing status quo. Let's do it because everyone else does it.
Okay. What's something that most What's something that most clients overlook when they're trying to scale?
I think retaining talent has got to be really, really overlooked. I think making sure you understand your people well enough. You know, we all as individuals will go through different stages in our life, whether we're having children or our children in school or, you know, our partner breakup or whatever it is. There's so many things going on in people's lives. And we're not there to be psychiatrists to our people, but you need to know where they are and what they're doing. And I think companies don't understand that.
I suppose there's like almost a prediction element where you need to understand, is somebody about to go through another stage in their life?
Exactly.
What's the probability of losing that person due to the fact that they're going to go off and do something, they're going to go off and have a child. If you know that that's coming, at least you can prepare for it as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about any natural situation, if you know, I know myself when I was just about to have a child, I was worried about finances. I need to provide a stable environment for my children to grow in. So all of a sudden, money become a massive issue. I wasn't bothered about pension. I wasn't bothered about you know certain benefits that a company would offer. I was just bothered about having enough money to get myself a mortgage to provide for my family. Now, you know, take a stage where I'm in my career now, you know, my needs for money are probably not as much needed as it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. So just using that as an example is understanding where your staff are in each of those stages and then adapting to that situation and being close enough to them and support them. One thing, it's just dawned on me. One thing I have as well is sometimes people go through difficult. It doesn't mean that they're poor performers. They may be performing poorly, but it might not necessarily be because they want to be performing poorly. It might be because something's going on in their life. Breakup with a breakup has a massive impact on an individual's sort of mental state. So I would say, just be close to your talent. Treat them like people, not like commodities. They are people at the end of the day.
Okay. Would you say that there's like if you were to name a missed opportunity that you've seen in many businesses, what would you name?
Ooh. Okay.
Something like a recurring missed opportunity.
I think the one that jumps to mind, she'll hate me for saying this, is my partner. So my partner was working for a medical business. And she was the operations manager, but she was more than that. She was working like a COO. She was doing lots of things. She was running the business for potentially the MD or the owner of the business. And I could see that, but he couldn't. And so when she started asking the questions around, I think I need to be rewarded for what I'm doing, and allows you to carry on doing what you're doing and stuff like that. And I see this a lot. I see people going above and beyond their, what their pay scale or what they're meant to do, their job description, shall we say.
Yes.
And they're not being rewarded accordingly. If anything, what's happening is more and more stuff's getting piled onto people. And we're expecting people to do more but not get paid more. And I think sometimes people need to see that. And so my partner ultimately got so frustrated, she went, enough's enough. You're paying me this, but I'm doing that.
I've seen that multiple times. I've got friends they'll be like, look, I could get more somewhere else because I'm doing more than what my pay description says.
And it's awful. I mean, I see this in the company all the time, and this is one of my biggest bugbears. Actually, you've just nailed something now. My director in an organisation. This is typical. Happens. An employee will come to them and say, I'm on X amount of money. I want a pay rise because I believe I'm at this level, right? They go, no, not willing to pay that. That person then leaves. Then you need to go to the market and find that skill set, and you end up paying it. You end up paying the amount that the person wanted in the first place. And it's like, what have you benefited apart from your pride of not willing to pay that individual? You've not benefited. If anything, you've lost out now because that individual who's been with you for X amount of time has left imparted all this knowledge.
This goes back to what we were saying earlier about being humble. If you're in a business and you can be humble, then you're going to be able to swallow that pride, and that's going to be better for the business, right?
Yeah, Exactly. If you think about it, every year, if you've got a good performing consultant who or good performing staff member, every year they're 1 year better experience. Right, they've got another year behind them. They've probably, hopefully, they've learned new skills or they've got new experience within that. We should always be aspiring to grow. We should be always aspiring to get better at what we do. Naturally, if that's the case, that person's become more and more of a commodity, more and more valuable to your business.
Yeah.
Therefore, naturally, the salary should be accompanying that growth. So if you've got a salary and it's static and you've not paid someone for 3 or 4 years and they're on the same money, then something's wrong. Either you're not valuing that staff member or that staff member is not developing.
It's a bomb that's about to go off, isn't it?
100%. It's one of two. It's either you're not paying well or the staff's not developing.
So what piece of advice would you give to a business that, let's say they've got somebody who's 4 years in, they're still on the same salary, but they're doing loads more? What's the first thing you do?
You can go to any recruitment agency and say, I've got a job. Someone I've got working at the moment, they're doing this job. I'd like to understand the salary survey. I'd like to understand what the going rate is. The market is changing. Some industries growing quicker than others, yeah? And the going rate for certain skill sets is increasing all the time. Make sure that your staff member is being paid fairly for what they're achieving and what they're doing.
And I think the staff member will appreciate you going
100%.
to them and going, look, even if it wasn't the full increase,
No.
if you go to them and you go, look, I can see you're working harder,
Yeah.
like you deserve some more money, even if it's a bit more,
Yeah.
they're going to appreciate that. And you know what? They're probably not going to look elsewhere because they're going, well, actually, I'm being
100%.
thought about.
And if you come back to what we talked about earlier on, which was the true cost of recruiting, to bring someone in through the door, the next person, if that person was to leave, it's costly. You're taking a risk because it might not work out. You know, there is so many costs to start. So it ends up being more expensive to the business not doing that.
Yeah.
So if you give someone a slight pay rise, keep them engaged, and you're constantly doing that year on year, you're going to have staff that are enjoying working for you and will stay with you.
Okay, and I suppose finally, intriguing one, what piece of advice would you give to the member of staff who's actually in this position?
Oh, that's hard, isn't it? I think it's just as much your responsibility as the owner or the manager to go to them. If you've got a structured performance management, i.e. you have weekly meetings or monthly meetings discussing how you're performing, how you're doing well, and as long as you're getting that sort of feedback that you're performing to the right level, and you are doing what you're expected to do, then you are well within your right to sort of go to them and say, look, I feel like I should be rewarded. I've been looking on the market. I believe that my sort of role is X. I'm not looking for X, but if you could maybe help me in terms of achieve that or get to that, then I'd be, that's what we should be doing. It's a two-way process. Mm-hmm. It's just as much your responsibility as the person as it is the manager or the director or the owner to do that as well.
Okay, that's an excellent answer. Okay, I've got a controversial question.
I like it.
Off the top of my head. Look, if you're looking at the data, more men will go and ask for a pay rise than women.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to women for asking for pay rises, empowering them to get a pay rise? What would you say to them?
I think it's the same process for everyone. Everyone should be paid equally for whatever role. It comes back to what I said before, which is you employ people based upon their ability to do the job. It doesn't matter if you're female or male. Everyone should, if you're doing the job at the same level, it's irrelevant. The process of going to your manager, don't assume that because you're a female, you're not paying well. It might be because they've just not thought about giving you a pay rise. So you just need to just go along, ask them the same questions, do the same process. It is about saying, this is my worth. This is what I believe I'm worth. If I go somewhere else, I can easily get this. It's doing it in a way that it's done in a way where it's more of a discussion. It's not a demand. If you go in the demanding it, more often than not, you're probably not going to get it. But it comes to the relationship you've got with the manager. Hopefully, if you've got a good relationship with your manager, this is probably a lot easier to have an open chat.
Yeah. It's about understanding your worth, right? If you go, I know that I'm doing more than my job role is, explaining, then you've got a full situation where you're going, okay, I can feel confident going in that room and asking
I
for
have
help.
actually got one advice here, actually, a really good advice. Think about your environment. Think about how you go about doing it. So one of the best advice that I've ever given someone, which worked down really well, is rather than I'm being really like extreme here, rather than steaming into your boss's office and saying, I want to demand, I want to sit with you. Basically, why don't you think about doing, hey, do you fancy going to meet up for a coffee? I've got a few things I'd like to have a chat with you about. It'd be nice to have a coffee and have it in a real softer, nicer environment where it's a little bit more, can we have a real open discussion about this? And say to them, hey, I've been looking into this a little bit more. I feel that, I'm not being valued at the level I do. I feel that if you could give me this, I could do even more for the business. It's about the environment. Think about the environment that you're doing it in. I personally believe in if you get people in the right environment, you're going to have a lot easier way of getting to the result you really want to get to.